Hello and welcome to this presentation about process analytics, the schema approach versus the timeline approach. Let's talk about why this topic is important. In a recent Gartner Big Data survey, respondents highlighted that process efficiency is the second highest priority for big data projects, right behind enhanced customer experience. Before I get started, I'll tell you a little bit about me and perhaps some of my biases before we dive deeper into this presentation. For a few years now, I've been working with small and medium businesses in state and local governments as a management consulting professional. I have an educational background in business analytics and a master's degree in business administration. So a little bit about my bias. So I'm working for the company with the most comprehensive process intelligence platform available on the market. But do not let that hinder your learning from this presentation. We are here today to learn about new technologies together. But do feel free to visit the website, learn more about what we're doing and what process intelligence can do for your organization. So as you probably all know, business processes are the lifeline of businesses. Whether it's trade settlements in financial services, order lifecycle management, claims processing in healthcare or insurance, or even customer onboarding, all of these are examples of critical business processes. They are not only critical from a customer experience perspective, but also from a top-line regulatory and compliance perspective as well. So how we understand how processes are executing has been a growing concern for many companies, both big and small. I see some people here nodding their heads that they've dealt with that as well. So let's dig a little bit deeper and understand why gaining an end-to-end view into business processes is critical for these industries. If you are in healthcare or insurance, managing the claims lifecycle enables you to better manage your revenue cycle and avoid penalties that are associated with missed SLAs. If you are in financial services, gaining visibility into trade settlement process enables you to manage customer experience, to answer status questions, avoid penalties that also might be associated with missed SLAs. This can also reduce settlement risk via faster straight-through processing. So, lots of you guys are using existing analytical tools. They can really be broken down into general business intelligence, process mining, and then sequence analysis categories. So general business intelligence tools analyze the relational data consisting of records and fields in rows and columns. Such tools are limited in that they do not provide the visual interfaces and functionality to visualize and analyze the sequence of records. While process mining is a bit further, they're limited to simple visualization and cannot address the messy, real-world processes. While machine learning and AI are general techniques, they can only be applied to refine data sets. And then manual approaches. They're just far too time-consuming, expensive, and extremely error-prone. So your current tools really don't help. So in this presentation, I want to talk a little bit about the evolution of process analytics and what process analytics is today for the modern business. So it's stemmed out of the manual approach, long, tedious processes of interviews and studies and questionnaires, typically performed from consultants that had a high hourly cost and that generally cost a lot of money and time to be produced. While process mining is relatively new, it's been around for a few years now. This approach has taken the digital footprint of processes and allowed it to be analyzed and sketched in a schema-based approach. While the timeline analysis is something very new, it's a patented approach, but certainly this is the evolution of process analytics. So the first approach that we're going to talk about, traditional process mining featuring that schema approach, typically converts process data into a flowchart-like schema and then analyzes the flow of cases through that schema. While the second approach, called timeline analysis, is based on the concept of a timeline. It's unfiltered and unedited history of a single entity that could be a case, an opportunity, an order, a patient, or any other process that you're looking to analyze. So through this presentation, we're going to demonstrate that the schema approach has many fundamental problems which severely affect its practical use in commercial application. So let's talk about process analytics in modern business. It's working to accelerate the digital transformation, streamlining processes, and eliminating waste and inefficiencies in your organizations. But it is a specialized branch of business intelligence. It utilizes the same data as most other types of analytic utilities on the market today. However, it views the data as the traces of business processes. It connects multiple records belonging to the same business entity That could be a patient, an online order, an insurance claim, or any other process. It then allows for the visualization of this process of those records behind the scenes. This information is then delivered as a very unique view of the process and can assist business users in better understanding processes which are not attainable with other types of BI. Now, yes, process analytics is tied very deeply with the concept of process mining, but process mining, when expanded upon with deeper visualization, deeper analysis, and more meaningful insights for an organization, makes it more easily understandable and the data more manageable. And that in turn leads to easier and more efficient improvement of business processes. So going further to include the use of artificial intelligence and machine learning allows the future of processes to be forecasted and can allow for alerts to be sent to avoid problems and prevent inefficiencies from ever occurring. So Gartner has identified process mining as a business trend for the past few years. It remains relevant due to the eagerness of companies to adopt RPA, as well as their eagerness and the understanding of quick discovery of understanding how business processes are working in organizations. Now, RPA is becoming widely adopted across different industries. Companies are using process mining as the framework to identify pre-implementation opportunities, identifying the steps that are happening as is, and then they're further using the ability of process analytics and more advanced monitoring to monitor success post-implementation. So process mining has certainly been a hot topic for some years now. However, the need of companies have changed, and as you'll see here through this chart, is that it's projected that the reason for adopting process mining will change over time. It's going beyond simple process discovery, but the needs are more aimed towards conformance and enhancement. Companies are beginning to seek vendors who are able to cater to these changing needs. So there have been several vendors who introduced to this industry who are able to help companies with process mining, advanced analytics, and some which include integrations with RPA, BPM, or offer monitoring capabilities. There are mainly two types of vendors. It's those that incorporate schema-based approach and those that incorporate the timeline approach. So this presentation is going to explore the differences between these two approaches. So let's take an example. It's where a company sells something and must ship orders. As the company goes through the process shipment being ordered, the package is created. Along that, the data is being recorded. Each record contains information including the instance event, the unique identifier, and the time in which this event occurred. So this data is continuously collected throughout the entire business process. This data can be transformed to create a visualization of the process, and this is where it can be analyzed with process mining or furthermore with process analytics. So how it works. In both cases, the data comes in the form of the records, each having at least a timestamp, a unique identifier, and some description of what happened in that instance at that moment. So that is where the similarity ends. The schema approach then goes ahead and converts the records into a flowchart, which is the closest fit for all the records under analysis. Then the schema becomes that backdrop for various analysis and visualizations. Whereas, contrary to that, the timeline approach creates as many individual histories as there are entities. So these timelines are analyzed by tools just like BI analyzes the records in a table. They're compared, filtered, searched, and aggregated. In this approach, the schema is just one of the aggregated representations of the timeline. A user then can look at the process from any angle, including in a case management-like perspective. So addressing some of the problems and limitations of the process schema approach. I'm going to go through 4 today, and the first being existence, second, non-schema events, thirdly, the entity history, and fourth, compliance. So generating the schema as the main goal of the process has been around for a very long time. It was initially considered a precursor for business process management. The common notion was that let's discover an existing schema and then feed it into the BPM tools for automation. This practice never materialized in commercial use since the complete reimplementation of processes is an unattainable task. So the same approach was applied to analytics. However, here it has several flaws. We'll start with existence. The first problem here, not every process comes with a well-organized model which looks like a flowchart. Whether it's a case management or an ad hoc process, or virtually any business environment in which a decision for the next step is made on the previous step, the schema falls apart very quickly. That happens even in structured environments. So consider the simple process here to the left: order, paid, ship. There's no trouble creating a schema for it as shown here. However, let's add just two additional actions: call and email. On every process step, the worker could either progress to the next step, call, or email the customer. So now the schema is converted into something that is difficult to comprehend or even analyze for improvement opportunities. And this is just for 5 simple events. Imagine adding more. So the next problem and limitation of process schema approach is the non-schema events. This being the second major issue here is that schema is for well-organized processes. So some events are not going to fit into the schema nicely. So if we look at this again, and we take the actions call and email, they clearly do not have a good place in the schema. So as a result, the schema-focused vendors do one of two things. They either remove these events completely and go back to the initial simplistic schema, or they artificially put them in some place. So even in well-organized processes, some of these events are not going to fit into that schema nicely. So whether they remove them or just artificially put it in there, neither solution makes much sense. So if events are removed completely, the model loses the important and sometimes critical information. Now we would never know that calls and emails can constitute the largest activity in our business and the business contribution, the time and cost of the process. By placing these events in the most likely place in the schema, the method just confuses the user because it's not only place where such events are to occur. So, looking at entity history, how can we learn about an entity's history with the schema approach? Simply, a huge drawback of the schema approach that it doesn't show and therefore doesn't allow users to analyze the entire history of entities. It's something that the timeline approach is fundamentally based on. So look at the schema here to the right. The diagram shows that there were 20 transitions from D back to A. But here are just some of the questions requiring the knowledge of the histories of the individual cases. Were there 20 cases which went back once? Or 10 cases that had 2 setbacks each? Or perhaps some other combination? If a case goes through the left branch B and then returns to A, would it next time go through B or through C? The schema-based analysis is ill-suited to answer such questions because it just does not include the historical information of these cases. The vast majority of process-related analytics vendors take this approach and limit the user in complete process understanding. The next limitation is in compliance. So compliance is probably the most important reason to invest in process analytics. Maintaining compliance means making sure that things are happening as they should be or how they're required to be. Now in the schema approach, compliance analysis is based on the concept of the happy path. It assumes there is one path through the events and every deviation from it is a violation. This is a huge simplification. It's rendering this approach almost useless in any real business environment. Now, the main reason for this is that compliance is not based on a path, but it's based on the rules of the execution. So instead of saying you must do A, B, C, and D, the compliance rules say, if you do A, you should do B, C, and D. Now B and C could happen in any order as long as they happen between A and D. Now D should happen no later than 3 days from A and 1 day from C. And it is okay to perform D multiple times but not C. Now the happy path method fails to handle these requirements. Therefore, it's missing the mark in ensuring and analyzing process compliance for the enterprise. The second major problem here with the happy path is that it doesn't describe the nature of the violations, but rather declares them as deviations from the prescribed path. Now in a few cases that's okay. However, in the vast majority of businesses, the violations are not created equally. For example, a minor delay in shipping due to inclement weather is not the same as completely missing some prescribed step. So the combination of these problems makes the schema approach rather unusable for compliance analysis for the traditional business user. So let's talk about the timeline approach. As described earlier, the timeline approach makes the linear sequence of actions the focus of the analysis. It's essentially creating the histories of each object. Now nothing is filtered out or hidden. Then the highly specialized analysis methods is applied to those raw histories. So data can come from any system of record across any region or any department. So unlike process mining tools, which reverse engineer the sequence events into the process schema in the form of a business process model or a BPMN notation or other similar notation, the timeline approach takes these tasks and puts them into a timeline view. So this task could be useful in cases where the business does not have an underlying process schema, but the task of discovering the common denominator for all sequences is different from understanding the variety and peculiarities of actual sequences. Now, this approach was specifically designed to overcome the drawbacks of the schema-based approach. So the patented timeline methodology has no trouble handling irregular and ad hoc processes, since the history doesn't depend on the process nature. The non-schema events appear on the actual places in the histories and participate in all kinds of analyses. The entity history is a native representation of the timelines. Compliance is treated as a complex collection of rules which are applied to the histories of those timelines. The timeline approach to process analytics provides 100% visibility of any process end to end, regardless of the system of record. It's going to be able to do that even when they're performed on multiple backend systems or multiple regions or multiple departments. This enables the visualization and analysis of processes as executed, even when there is little to no integration between these systems. This approach is going to make it easy to identify and quantify the impact of inefficient or broken process variations. It's going to give you the ability to determine root causes and how to fix them. It can then monitor and predict ongoing performance in real time to alert T staff for protocol deviations and ensure positive outcomes for your business processes. Now, advanced process analytics is here. It's here anytime, anywhere for anyone in your organization. There's more to your business than just order to cash, procure to pay, and ITSM processes. So it's time to improve your entire enterprise with a platform that was built for the enterprise business user. Many traditional process mining tools are limited to connecting to specific data sources such as SAP, Oracle, Salesforce, or ServiceNow. Go beyond simple dashboards and traditional process mining. Get a platform for everyone to understand processes and bring process analytics to your entire enterprise.